Welcome back to Prison Professors, where we try and teach people the best possible outcome from America's prison system. And in today's episode is going to be part 2 of talking with Mariano Orosco, a man who had a 38-year prison sentence, a man who was once identified himself as an inveterate gang member and somebody who really expected to serve the rest of his life in level 4 prison yards, engaging in violence, engaging in crime, until a wonderful woman came into his life and changed the way he thought. And today, we're going to hear part 2 of that episode about how he started to adjust. So Mariano, thank you so much for sticking with us again. Why don't you continue telling us the story about this transformation that happened after Amelia influenced you to begin pursuing a different path? How did your behavior change in the prison?
So yeah, that was obviously different for me, and it was in all reality very difficult. I didn't know how to act in a way that would garner me the acceptance and the respect that I really always wanted in my life. So initially, it became about academics for me, because my wife was in academics and was at the university. I was very inspired by that. And, slowly but surely I began to open myself and express like, hey man, I really would love to have a GED. I really would love to go to school, And again, she would come back with these answers and like, why isn't that happening for you? Why are you not doing it? And I began with my typical sort of like, well, this place is rough. This place doesn't really allow it, which is for the most part very true, except for, she began to say, and tell me sort of in different ways that I can actually do it. So she would have these expectations where I would say, you know what, I'm going to try. As soon as I get off of this job assignment, I'm going to go across the way. That was very difficult for me because in California, the level 4 yards, it's very hard to travel from one building to the next. You have, about 3 or 4 like sort of checkpoints where you're asked where you're going, are you supposed to be there? If nobody sent you there, then you're not getting there. So I went through all that process with her, and she was there to support me, and she was there to say, hey man, you know what, I understand if you can't do it, good for you for trying. And I had never really heard that before. So that really inspired me to continue. And she began to hold me accountable for this education that I professed to want, which I really did want. I just never really broke that down for myself and really understood how much I really needed it. So that's how that began in academics. And then I specifically remember the topic of sort of revenge that sort of shocked her in one of our visits where I expressed to her how I felt about revenge. And we sort of started to dissect that. And sort of at that moment is when I began to participate in these NA programs. Gogi for sure was one of those groups or one of those families that really helped me out understand these belief systems. And as I started to express to her like, hey, guess what? This is happening. She began to sort of assist me in seeing the silver lining in these situations, where 75% of the letter consisted of all the crappy stuff that was going on as a result of like CDCR's like inability to like help me out. So she began to sort of just kind of slowly and guide me and allow me to come to my own answers with academics and within the self-help realm.
So you said that there was something I wasn't clear on. You said that after you finished your job, you were going to go across the way. Did that mean you were going to apply to go from one housing unit to another housing unit? Or what did you mean I was going to go across the way?
So, so I worked at it as a yard crew. So with yard crew, we are limited to like our own area to travel around, walk around and clean up. So for me to get from the yard to the actual education building, I would have to go through, gate that's obviously closed, and then the tower CO. And then from there, I would have to go through the CO that was at the door for the education building. And really, it's a really short distance, extremely short, but I would probably run into like 3 or 4 COs that would question where I was going. Again, because it is a high security prison. And then so a lot of times I wasn't able to succeed to get there, because when I said, hey, I'm going to go sign up for education, they would automatically ask you, who sent you? Well, nobody sent me. I kind of want to do this on my own. And they would send you back and say, well, get permission from your floor CO, then you get permission from the tower. And that can, as I say, it sounds very simple to do, but because I've been there, I know that that is very difficult. So that's what I mean, like, go on my way and get across the way. That became a mission in itself.
I understand that. And I remember those kinds of checkpoints when I was in a high security prison. It was difficult. And I think I wrote at one time an article of how I had to go through like 7 or 9 different points to get from my housing unit to the education unit. But because everybody in the prison knew that I was obsessed with getting an education, I never had those problems, whereas you had to really kind of reinvent yourself. And I would guess that a lot of those guards that were blocking you, maybe they were already, would you say that they were already influenced because they've known your history and they've known the people you associate with, and they didn't think you belonged in education?
Oh yeah, certainly. I still, my thinking was beginning to change, but in reality, my mannerisms, my behavior, my vocabulary, the way I approached really anybody was the very same as that person that I was trying not to be anymore. So yes, it was as a result of it, and it was merited. Just because it was difficult for me and I didn't like it, some of that was merited.
So I think that's a really important message for people who are watching this program, if they are in a prison, is to understand the words I use, the way that I walk, the people with whom I associate, the tattoos I may get, the jobs I choose. Every single thing about you is like you're living in a fishbowl and everybody's watching you, including staff and including the people who are serving time. And all of them are making judgments and assessments about how you should serve that time. It takes an enormous strength of character to say, I'm going to, transition who I am or what my identity is to become something of what I want to become. Have you ever heard this statement from a writer? His name is von Goethe. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but he inspired me very early in my sentence, because he wrote something that said, if you treat a man for the worst thing that he has done, he will always be that worst person and probably grow worse. But if you can show him what he can possibly become and give him a pathway to pursue that, then every day he's going to work toward becoming that and more. And certainly that's what you have done. And, we need to see more of that inside of the prison system. And certainly I think your message is going to help more people get there. So you started in education. What did you start reading at that point? How did your reading level change from reading entertainment type books, if it changed at all?
So it certainly changed for the first year. I think I really stuck to books that were provided through the education department. And again, that struggle to get into education lasted for me for about 2 years. I transitioned to another prison and I still was not able to get into there. But after I left that first prison, I was able to have a gentleman sort of volunteer his time to teach me what I needed to learn in order to get his GED. So my reading at that point really consisted of math. I was reading whatever I could from math and trying to understand the vocabulary that went on within math with these formulas and the way in which math is expressed in words. So for about 2 years, that's where I would read the most.
So to give us some context here, what year did you drop out of school before you went to prison?
So I graduated middle school. So the last year of middle school was my 8th grade. That was last year. I attended 3 months of high school, but that was just showing up and doing criminal activity. I didn't study. I didn't even attend the classes.
And when you made this commitment to start changing, so there was never a pursuit of GED up until you'd already been in jail for nearly 10 years. There was never a pursuit of education. But now there is, and it takes 2 years for you to get into the program, and you start, the first course that you start to hone in on is mathematics.
Yeah.
Did other courses eventually open up for you as well?
Yes. So what happened was that while I was in Calipatria, there was this gentleman that volunteered basically 5 days a week, an hour a day, to get me familiar with mathematics. I was already really interested in writing, and I got to practice that a little bit of my own. But my stay at Calipatria was short because they instituted a program where they would allow a level 4 to transition to a level 3 if you merited it. At the 10th month, I went to my annual, and I was able to highlight my behavior, my good behavior, and my circumstances. And the captain happened to be there. He looked over my file and said, "You know what? You fit in this category. You can go to a level 3." So on a level 3 is where my education really kicked off for me, which was Iowa State Prison.
So I can tell you that for me, I did I think 8 years in high security. And then when I went to a medium security, it was as if I felt the weight of the world come off of my shoulder. It was just so much less intense. Tell us your experience having been, but I was never a gang member. I was somebody who learned how to adjust in the prison in a positive way. I was just there because I didn't know anything different. I was serving a 45-year sentence. So that's why I was there. And I didn't know what other prisons would be like. But when I got to a medium, I said, wow, I just feel the tension washing off of me. In what ways did your adjustment to a level 3 change from level 4 with regard to that feeling of tension?
Oh, well, again, I think in that regard, we have the same experience. What I saw that was very new for me and very refreshing was that there existed different communities within prison. I had never, ever thought of the word community when I was in prison until I got to the level 3. Because now you had people who identify themselves as programmers. And then you have people who identify themselves as sort of these leadership position guys. And then you have like the self-help community. And then you have the church community. So that was very new for me, very refreshing. I didn't feel the sort of the pressure, the expectation to fall in line. Now I had choices, I had options, and that was very real for me when I got to the level 3 yard. It became very apparent very fast.
So one of the things that I found when I went to a medium, and I'd like to hear your take on this, that there were a lot of people there that really at least would say that they wanted to be on a level 4 because they thought that they'd get more respect there. And they didn't understand that everybody on a level 4 really wants to come down, but they can't come down. And yet these people have the mindset that they still have that mentality. I want to live in the prison. I want to build my reputation. I want to go to Lewisburg, or I want to go to, a USP in the federal system. And I know in the state system, it's level 4. Because they think they get their respect there. They don't realize that respect really comes from within and what we're doing. And you were building more respect by staying away from there. What was it like for you? Because I got to imagine coming down from a level 4, being a well-known gang member and a man who has a history of violence, they probably look to you as a leader. How did that interaction go out with the people, if there were those people in a level 3 that wanted to be in a level 4, or at least that's what they said?
So, so I didn't have that aspect in my life where there was people on my level 3 or that I arrived at that looked up to me or any of that, because really that seemed like a whole different world to me. I had never met anybody there, with the exception of one gentleman. And this is the guy, Adrian Gutierrez is the guy that sort of started to lead me in this path while we were on the level 4. But I certainly ran into men who would express that, every chance they got. they would sort of complain of how complacent that place was, how nobody was really doing anything. These illegal activities weren't going on. The drugs weren't available, or the violence just wasn't there, and nobody's with the business kind of thing. I heard that quite often, and some of those guys became my friends later on. And it's very real. It's very common that these men want to go somewhere where they think that they would be able to thrive, basically based on the skills that they already know and learned in the past. And so if you know how to commit criminal activity, if you are very comfortable with violence and you sort of thrive on the stress that brings on, then of course you want to place yourself in that environment. And that is very true. And those emotions are very valid, and they really feel like that. And, those people I feel like are struggling with that, because as I did, until I knew something different. So yeah, they didn't know how, the 4-yard ran, and they wanted to be there. And sometimes I would express to them, my ideas about that and my opinions. I would do so with the people that were already my friends or my acquaintances. But that is very, very common. And, those topics come up a lot in the self-help realm, in the groups. We always talk about that, how men think that they want to be somewhere when in reality, they're in a better spot.
Well, what reality is that they need the mindset of leadership and personal development. And that's what they can learn from listening to your story, because you're somebody who's walked in both areas, but also started to, instead of seeing himself living the rest of his life in prison, you started to see yourself living as a productive citizen, as a worthy companion to Amelia. And that probably influenced your behavior, where you're starting to build self-respect, self-esteem, more confidence that this doesn't have to be my life. And in the next, I'd like to, if it's okay, I'd like to close this video and come back with another video where we talk a little bit more about the evolution of growing from somebody who only believes that he has to live inside of a prison to believing he could be somebody like you have matured into right now. You must have seen yourself in that level of growth. And if you could stick around with us for another episode, I'd love to do a third one where we talk about that transformation. Is that okay?
Definitely.
So thank you so much for being a part of our Prison Professors community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. And in the description below, I will put a link to all of the series of episodes, the playlist with Mariano, a man who went to prison for a 38-year sentence for a crime of violence, and yet has completely transformed his life. We're going to hear about that transformation in the next episode, but I do hope that you will support the program by both supporting our sponsors and just being a subscriber, where we can produce new videos every day with hopes of teaching and inspiring more people in jails and prisons across America. Thank you.